All right. I know I tell you that we've got a great interview for you almost every time, but we really do here. Tom Morello's in the studio. A couple of groups, Rage Against the Machine, Audio Slave, The Night Watchman, you might have heard of those.
Sure.
Toured with a fellow by the name of Bruce Springsteen? No, Springsteen.
Yeah.
Right?
He's on his way up.
Yeah, the G Street Band, or there's a letter involved somehow.
Yeah.
E Street Band. And now, Prophets of Rage.
Correct.
Okay, so Prophets of Rage are super badass. You got Rage Against the Machine guys, you, Tim Commerford, Timmy C, as the cool kids call him, and I'm certainly among the cool kids, and then drummer Brad Wilk. But then you got Public Enemy's Chuck D.
That's right.
And Cypress Hill's Be Real as well.
That's right.
So why don't you just put...
dream team.
No, but it is though.
Yeah.
But it is though. Why don't you just put together all my favorite artists and make a band out of it or something? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking exactly the same thing. Headed into this election season, it felt like it was impossible to stand on the sidelines of history, and these dangerous times demand these dangerous songs. So, I just basically got on the phone. I said, raise your hand if you want to make a difference this year with your music. We've got this catalog, this incredible deep catalog of songs between Rage, Public Enemy, and Cypress Hill. It's time to play them, to rageify the people, and to make America rage again.
All right. Well, you guys got to get Killer Mike on the tour, too, at some point, right?
I'm not opposed to that.
Okay, but, look, I was more of a rap guy growing up, so I listened to Chuck D.
Yeah.
I listened to Prophets of Rage over and over again. That's a song.
Well, so did we. I mean, Public Enemy and Cypress Hill were the two primary hip-hop influences of Rage Against the Machine. Those were the cassettes that we were, banging as we were writing that first Rage record. So it's an honor to be in a band with those guys.
Yeah, college was all about Public Enemy for me, and then law school was about Cypress Hill.
Yeah, sure.
And although I have you and Bruce on my iTunes as well.
We appreciate that.
So obviously super badass group. Now, what are we raging about? Is the question at hand. I know what I'm raging about, but I'm curious what you guys
Well, I mean, it's my thought was, what sort of means do I and we have at our disposal to inject our voice into this insane mountain of bullshit that is going on in this electoral season? We have a catalog of Rage Against the Machine songs that have been dormant for too long, and it's time to activate that music. It's time to play that music, which has such an incredible connection with its audience and such relevance in 2016 that it felt like a crime to not play those. And we thought, but we want it to be something that's contemporary. It's not a nostalgia show. We want to do something that we haven't done before. We want to play with Chuck D and Be Real, two of our favorite MCs of all time, and then combine those three catalogs, plus writing some new songs, and head out on this road this year on our national campaign. Like, we're going to, this is like Sherman's March to the Sea that we're doing now. I mean, I frankly
I love the way you talk.
I just got fed up with hearing every night in the media that Donald Trump is raging against the machine, that Bernie Sanders is raging against the machine. You don't know what it means to be raging against the machine unless you're a dude who's in Rage Against the Machine. And so we're here to set that record straight.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Is Bernie not hardcore enough?
Well, I think that he had an admirable strategy to try to hijack the Democratic Party and to try to change it from being a corporate Democratic Party to a people's Democratic Party. That's a strategy. And, God bless him. And he's a person whose heart is in the right place. But as someone who has worked for a United States Senator of the Democratic Party, I know what that Democratic Party is about. And while Bernie is a person with great integrity, that party has no integrity. And so, from my point of view, while it's important to vote, that's not how change really happens. And if you want to see change, you have to make it yourself in your vocation. You as a host, me as a guitar player.
Okay, I love it in 18 different ways. Let's go further. So you worked for Alan Cranston,
that's right.
The Democratic Senator. And not a lot of people might know this, but you went to Harvard, and then you had a fascinating life. But okay, now you're at Alan Cranston's office. What did you do there, and what did you learn about the system?
Yeah, I was a U.S. Senator's scheduling secretary for 2 years, so I scheduled all of his appointments in California. He's a U.S. Senator, but I scheduled his California appointments. And my job, one of the principal functions of my job was to call up rich guys, hand the phone to him, and he would ask them for money. I'd line.
Wow.
This is the day before cell phones. So this is 88, 89. So
even back then.
I'm in like a hotel lobby where there's a bank of phones, dialing up phones. Can you hold for Senator Cranston? You let the phone just hang there. Dial the next one. I got 9 of them in a row. We blocked them all out, and the senator goes down one at a time and works those dudes like an MMA master, works those dudes for money, and then that money's not free at the end of the day.
So you call people that are on a list
I got a
given
list.
to you.
Yeah, it's like multi-millionaire telemarketing.
Wow, isn't that interesting? So they still do it today.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
they
and
do.
now it's even more sophisticated, and you don't have to have the phones, hanging off the wall. But
I got to see how the political sausage was made.
Yeah.
You know, and at the end of the day, I mean, Senator Cranston, well, he was a very nice person, God rest his soul, he's passed, but he was involved in the Keating scandal, which is sort of where his reputation in some ways went down in flames because of these shady, money for hire deal, senators for hire deals that he got wrapped up in.
So I remember they asked Keating, the guy who tried to bribe those senators, including John McCain, by the way, why'd you do it? Did you expect a return on investment? And he's like, of course I did. Why else would I do it?
Yeah, out of the goodness of his heart.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a businessman, so I was trying to, basically buy them off so that I would get favors.
Yeah.
So it's not that complicated.
I mean, exactly. I mean, and one of the reveals of this campaign early on in the debates, Trump was very forthcoming about he would donate money to Democrats, he'd donate money to Republicans, because no matter who gets elected, he wants their ear and he wants the favors back. That's how it works.
Yeah, I'm scared to death that that he's going to be in a debate with Hillary Clinton. And this is what we warned about in the primaries. He's going to turn around and say, hey, Hillary, didn't I buy you before?
Yeah.
Right? Remember when I paid you and then you came to my wedding?
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
So I say it's admirable that Sanders tried to hijack the Democratic Party. My take is that the problem is deeply systemic, and right, left, and center, people know it. That's why they're attracted to a fascist and a socialist this year. That the two-party, the corrupt, broken two-party monopoly does not work for the people of America.
Okay, so
rock and roll does, however, work. That is something that is a bipartisan platform.
No, I saw Huckabee playing Cat Scratch Fever with with Ted Nugent. Okay.
They were like on stage together?
Yeah.
Playing a song about venereal disease.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And how he wanted to sleep with the young, almost presumably underage girl next door.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, okay, they like rock and roll.
Yeah.
They can't help themselves.
That's the entry drug. That was one of the part of the, what in my view, the cultural success of Rage Against the Machine wasn't because we had, Zach's lyrics are brilliant, but it wasn't because of our Noam Chomsky-esque diatribes. It was because it's awesome rock and roll music. That's what this tour is going to be. It's awesome rock and roll music. That's what puts butts in seats. Like it's Rage and Public Enemy and Cypress Hill destroying venues around the country. And that's the spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down.
I remember when my friend first played Rage Against the Machine for me when I was in law school. And I was like, oh, wow. Right? I was like, damn, these guys are real. Yeah. And so, yes, there's that moment of I keep using the word badass. Sorry, like that.
It's kind of badass. There's really.
Yeah, it is. That's how it feels, and it's visceral.
Yeah.
So, but I care about the ideology and the principles and the politics of it, of course, and what you're raging against. So let me go back to that for a second. So I couldn't agree more that it's systemic. So people say are you saying Hillary Clinton's a bad person? No, it's not about bad people, evil people. Yeah. It's a system that's built on corruption. And what I explained to them is that this was before Citizens United. Look at your story from Alan Cranston in 88, 89, et cetera. It's from Buckley v. Vallejo, and it's from Bellotti, these decisions, Supreme Court decisions in 76 and 78 that said, money's speech, and corporations are human beings, so they have the freedom of speech to buy all your politicians. And they did.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
And that's how the system got corrupted. And then anyone who
I suggest it goes back further. I suggest that the ruling class has had a hand in who runs the country long, before 1976.
No, I hear you, but I think we had a golden 40 years or so where they passed Glass-Steagall, they passed a number of reform laws in the New Deal where it made it harder to bribe politicians, and at least it was illegal to bribe them, right? Then, starting in 76, the Supreme Court just simply made it legal.
Sure.
Which then made it more systemic, more of a factory. Like, okay, insert politician here, insert bribe there, and off we go, and we get everything we want. And I've talked to Ralph Nader about this, and he said we ran into a brick wall in '78. And I went back and did the research and found out about the Supreme Court decisions in '76, '78. I said, why? He said, Tony Coelho, he's a Democratic congressman at the time, and he told all the other Democrats, hey, you know what, we don't have to work with Nader anymore. We can take corporate cash just like the Republicans do.
Exactly.
And he said, and then we were done.
Right. And because, the question that I would ask the voter to ask themselves, to anyone to ask themselves, is do the people that own the country, do the people that rule the country deserve to? If not, what are you doing about it? I mean, I think that the answer is an obvious one, and you see in the, from Occupy Wall Street to Black Lives Matter to the Sanders campaign to even the Trump campaign, that across the political spectrum, people have decided this does not work for me. These candidates that are being forced down my throat by Wall Street do not work for me.
Yep. So couldn't agree more. And we ask obvious questions too. Do you think that money corrupts politics? Over 90% of Americans go, of course it corrupts politics. What are you, schmuck? Right? Are corporations human beings? I've never been in a room where a single person thought a corporation was a human being outside of New York and Washington, where they all agree, yeah, of course they're human beings. It's preposterous. So what do you suggest not everybody can do rock and roll like you do, right? So what do you suggest they do?
The world, I mean, contrary to what the reason why we're going on tour, it's not just rock and roll that changes the world. It's people in whatever vocation they're in. Every progressive, radical, or revolutionary change has come from below, not from above. So it's around people's kitchen tables where they make the decisions that make the Berlin Wall eventually fall. It's people in their trade unions that make apartheid crumble. It's people who, from the civil rights movement to women's right to vote, it's the people watching and listening to this show that using their power, their creativity, their ingenuity to come up with the schemes that are going to make the kind of planet that we want to live in. That's the answer. It's not, you can vote, but it's every 4 years you trust in hope, like and think, well, in 4 years maybe we'll get another shot at something that's going to be not quite as shitty as this is. Well, that's not how the world changes. That's how they want you to think the world changes, because the deck is stacked.
So, given what you just said about hope, were you a little or a lot let down by Obama, or maybe not let down because you knew it wasn't going to be real?
My expectations were not high. I mean, I thought that I never thought that the United States of America would, a country where racism is as American as baseball and apple pie, would elect a black person to be president. That was a surprise. But there are plenty of, awful black leaders around the world. Just because you get someone who has a different pigmentation doesn't mean that they're going to, lead some sort of revolution. I was cautiously hopeful, but those hopes were almost immediately dashed. And while Trump, here's the thing about Trump: we have to stop Trump, right? Have to stop Trump. Why? Because he's calling for ethnic cleansing. Wants to deport 11 million people, build a wall, and keep Muslims out. Obama's deported 2 million people already. Why do we not want Trump? Because he's a climate change denier. He believes that it's a hoax, a Chinese hoax. Obama does, to his credit, does admit that science is real, but he's in favor of fracking and offshore drilling. So it's like Trump has these exaggerated versions of Obama, and Trump in the Middle East. What is he calls for basically a new colonialism. We're going to take their oil. Obama's endless wars in the region. At the end of the day, it's about access to oil. And so Trump's positions are exaggerated, but they're not entirely different from the seeds of the Obama administration that Hillary Clinton seconds everyone.
Yeah, and President Obama gets a pass on so many things. So, for example, Trump just kicked out the Washington Post reporter, and everybody went ballistic.
Sure.
But Obama, right before the end of his campaign in 2008, kicked out a bunch of reporters he didn't like.
Yeah.
And then he's been the worst when it comes to whistleblowers and transparency in his administration. And on the deportations, he literally broke a record. He deported 2 million people, as you say. That's more than anyone. I'd say more than Reagan, but Reagan actually did amnesty.
Right.
Literal amnesty, not kind of amnesty. Amnesty. So Reagan was way to the left of Obama, and we're getting further and further right as we go along, because it isn't about Obama or Hillary Clinton. It's about the system.
That's correct.
And that's the system that you're trying to topple, in a sense.
That's correct.
So Well, then, you know,
There's some excellent rock and roll. I mean, we talk a lot about politics, but at the end of the day, like it's a big rock and roll concert. If you don't get that right, then none of the politics matter.
okay, certainly true. But they would come back at you and say, yeah, but Tom, given the things that you care about, clearly Hillary Clinton is leagues better than Donald Trump. So who are you going to vote for? Are you going to vote for Hillary?
Yeah. Well, I would say that the phrase "the lesser of two evils" is not a figure of speech, and it's fact. And it's a good cop, bad cop system where those of us who are progressive minded hold our nose every 4 years as we go into the voting booth going, well, at least we're keeping the Huns at bay, you know, for the next 4 years. And it's a good cop, bad cop system intentionally, but they're both cops. You know what I mean? And so that's why I say that the Sanders campaign was very admirable. And the thing that Sanders did that I think is even more admirable, and while he may have fallen short of getting the nomination, he is in some ways has a Rage Against the Machine vibe in that he's inspiring millennials to think outside the box. You know, I know 22, 23-year-olds who are now looking up Zinn and Chomsky because of Sanders. That's their entry drug. In the 90s, it was maybe Rage Against the Machine that was their entry drug to a world of ideas that are outside the ones that are force-fed you on the nightly news.
Yeah. Well, you know, I hope that we too are an entry drug. That's my great hope and desire.
That's all you can. That's all you can hope is in your vocation that you don't leave behind your beliefs. And in your vocation, you're doing that. So kudos to you. You get 2 free tickets to a show.
Okay, good. That's all this interview was about. We're done. Okay. So I was talking about the music for a second, but then I'll come back to the politics because that's what drives me. As I told you, I listen to all that, but I'm not a music guy, right? I'm a sports guy, I'm a politics guy, I'm not a music guy. Sure. So I'll ask the incredibly naive question, so is it rock or is it rap? What is it?
Well, it's an alloy of the two. It's a powerful alloy of the two. I mean, Rage Against the Machine's music was a hybrid of punk, hard rock, and hip-hop music. In this, we go to like the source when it comes to hip hop. Like the two of the most devastating hip hop groups and best live hip hop groups of all time are Public Enemy and Cypress Hill. We've got their MCs in our group. The rhythm section, Engine Room of Timmy C and Brad Wilk is, in my view, the best rhythm section since Led Zeppelin's. And then I do my best to make barnyard animal noises and steal a few Black Sabbath riffs. You sew that all together, and with DJ Lord, who's the turntablist of Public Enemy, he's a world-class musician in his own right. He's in the band as well. So it's a blast that we've been having. It really feels like the earliest days of Rage Against the Machine with a common purpose, a mission, and playing great music that's connecting with an audience. One more important thing about this Prophets of Rage tour, one of the things that we've been raging against for decades now is economic inequality. We didn't want there to be a financial barrier to coming to the shows. So there's a base $20 ticket price. There's a starting price of $20 at every show. It's the lowest ticket price this summer at any of the venues that we're playing, and half the ticket price the last time Rage Against the Machine toured in 1999. So we wanted there to be no economic barrier, and also a portion of the proceeds from every show go to local homeless shelters and food banks in each city where we play.
Right. Now, of course, you're, underplaying your role in it. BBC poll, by the way, had you as one of the top 5 guitarists of the last 30 years. Do you look at the other 4 and go, fuck that?
I don't know what the other 4 are, but I'm ready. I'm ready. If you've got 5 amps you want to line up here, I'll give it a shot.
Okay. And so, all right, but that does lead into what you were mentioning there about ticket prices and stuff. Is how do you, when you're trying to do a revolution, live in a corporate world? So you guys play things like the Verizon Mega Center or whatever they're called.
The Dunkin' Donuts Arena and wherever those things are printed. I mean, I look at it this way. Like I grew up in a small town in Illinois. I bought my records at a chain music store, and my favorite band, The Clash, that changed my life and helped politicize me, and any bit of politicization that I've passed on to another generation came from The Clash. They're on Epic Records, just like Rage Against the Machine. You know, it's like we don't live in a narco-syndicalist utopia. We live in a capitalist society. People buy their books, but I buy my Noam Chomsky books at Barnes & Noble because that's where they sell books. You know, that's the give them enough rope so one day we get to hang them.
Okay, now see, that's Rage. Okay.
But I'll say that, you know, it is not a position that is not, it's open to criticism. There are other ways to do things, and there are some people who are more pure and they sell singles out of the back of pickup trucks that are fueled by hemp. There's nothing wrong with that point of view. We've decided that we wanted to, from day one, we wanted to have a message that was a global message that was heard by people around the globe.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with keeping it real. Look, I joke around about how the guys who are always talking about hemp, they're not in it for the pants.
Sure.
Right. They're always talking about the pants, and I don't think it's the pants that they're actually concerned about. But you know, it's funny. Cypress Hill has that line out of the Bible in their biggest hit.
Insane in the membrane?
Not Insane in the Membrane, but in that same album. Okay. And so that was a kind of a gateway drug for me in that I was like, oh, right, it does say in the Bible that you're allowed to use all the herbs and and plants of.
Sure.
Now, I didn't do drugs actually until decades later, but that planted a seed, if you will, in my head. Like
maybe there was sort of a biblical underpinning.
And so for you, you're saying it was the Clash. Now, you come from a literal revolutionary family. Yeah. You're half Kenyan, so obviously you weren't born here. That's what I hear from.
I was born in the U.S.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, so I was. Well, if I were to run for office, there would be a lot of scrutiny. Yeah.
No, you were born in Harlem, and hence not in America. Obviously, according to conservatives. And so your dad was a participant in the Mau Mau uprising?
My great uncle was Jomo Kenyatta, who was Kenya's first president and was the leader of the anti-colonial movement in Kenya that ousted the British. My father and the other members of my family were involved in that movement as well. My parents met in Kenya. My mom's a Irish-Italian lady from a coal mining town in central Illinois, who found herself there and basically went native, during the uprising, and met my dad, and here I am on your show.
Okay. And so did that influence you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I grew up with my single mom in a suburb of Chicago, but the politics of my home stood in stark contrast to the politics of the archly conservative community in which I grew up in, where the Lake County, Illinois, Democrats don't even run. I mean, it's the deep north. In a way, and,
that's a funny way. Yeah.
But the politics, there were photographs of Che Guevara and Kwame Nkrumah on the walls of my home, and there were photographs of Richard Nixon on the walls of every other home in the block, which I didn't realize till I got to high school and realized that my worldview was dramatically different. So I guess I was in that regard, like I just there was a different vibe in my home. But the main thing that politicized me is I was the only black kid in an all-white town, so I didn't have to read about injustice or the feelings that the underdog might have. I got it beaten into me on the playground, and that's a.
So how literal is that?
What are you talking about? Like, there's a particular word that sometimes white people who don't like black people use. Like that was a nickname. I had an afro. I had an afro in a school of. So it was pretty crazy.
So you're 52, right?
Yeah.
So you grew up. I'm 46. Roughly the same time. It's amazing the different environment you grew up in and how much it makes a difference. Yeah. I grew up in like this multicultural nirvana in Central Jersey, where everybody was a different race. And plus I was a big kid, so I was like, oh, please make fun of me. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Like sometimes a new
take
kid.
your best shot.
A new kid would get into school.
Give it a try.
Oh yeah, come on here. Come and see. So
a little bit different in Liberty.
Yeah, because you're so outgunned and outnumbered there.
There's a noose in my family's garage when I was 13 years old.
Oh my God!
It wasn't the only noose I saw in my teenage years. Not kidding you. Like my mom was a high school teacher. She taught history in Libertyville Public High School, and not regularly, but periodically, there'd be Klan literature tacked up by one of her students. Anonymously, and like her little, like you pull the screen down for videos and whatnot, that'd be tied in a noose with something written on the chalkboard.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
it was also. I mean, on the other hand, it was a bucolic, lovely place to grow up. Which the school had a lot of facilities, for being damn racist. At the same time.
But that's the thing about America. That is America.
Sure.
One does not negate the other.
That's right.
The bucolic part is beautiful and gorgeous, and we enjoy it and we love America.
It's a great place to grow up, nooses notwithstanding.
Right. Yeah. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that there aren't people that are, putting nooses in your, garage and that aren't deeply racist. Yeah. Both of those things coexist at the same time. And the conservatives feel like when you point that out, you're spitting in their eye. Well, first of all, they spit in your eye as you were growing up, right? Those guys. Yeah. So I think you're allowed,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
To have an opinion about
Yeah.
someone putting a noose in my family's ground.
That's right. And the second thing is, they just feel like you can only say positive things about America, unless, of course, you're Donald Trump, and you can say America sucks and it's the worst, and I'm going to make it great again, even though it's now miserable and pathetic, right?
Well, I mean, my take is that the greatest myth about America is that it's one country. It is not. It is that it is a bipolar country, and there is the America of awesome baseball and Martin Luther King and and the Wobblies and Jackie Robinson and good-hearted people whose names you never read about in history books, who provide for their families and go to work and take 2 jobs. And then there are the lynchers, and there are the napalmers, and there are the union busters. Both those things are absolutely American. There are people who want to deny women the right to vote. That's just as American as the people who fought for women to get the right to vote.
Okay, so let's then go to my version of the revolution. So I want to get an amendment that rewrites the code. And so the problem is the system. So let's fix the system. Let's rewrite the code and get the bug out. So the bug is the money in politics. And so I think it can be fixed. I'm an idealist in that same sense, but very practical. So I formed something called Wolfpack on my spare time, because hosting the show and running a network wasn't enough work.
I understand, yeah.
Right, and so...
I'm a multitasker as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we just, on Friday, passed in our 5th state. So here's what we're trying to do. Washington is too corrupt, but in the Constitution, in Article 5, it says you can actually get an amendment in 2 ways. You can either get 2/3 of Congress to propose it, or you can get 2/3 of the states to propose it. If the states call for a convention, you could propose it at that convention. So they built revolution into the Constitution because they were revolutionaries. And they said, oh, we got an idea. Instead of having to pick up muskets like we did, okay, we'll write something into this code that says if you want to do a revolution, just amend this thing, right? And here's how you do it. And at some point, Washington will get too corrupt, do it through the states.
Yeah.
So we're doing it now. Rhode Island was state number 5 on Friday. Bipartisan, by the way. In the Senate, 36-0. All Democrats, all the Republicans voted for it. Because, like you say, whether it's Trump on one side, Sanders on the other side, and everybody else, we're sick of it.
Yeah,
we're sick of the money in politics. It's drowning us.
Yeah.
It's drowning our democracy. So, and then on an unrelated but different note, I got arrested, like you've been arrested in the past, recently for Democracy Spring, protesting money in politics. We did civil disobedience. Rosario Dawson was there, Larry Lessig was there, and Kai Newkirk ran it for Democracy Spring, et cetera. So, one, tell us about how you got arrested in the past. Okay.
Which time?
And then 2, is there any movement like that that now you think makes sense is the right way to go?
Well, as far as my arrest record, I think it's public record. I mean, there was 4 of the 5 were for civil disobedience. The other one was just a misunderstanding about a car. That was a very long time ago. But they've all been orchestrated plans to affect some particular change. Normally labor issue related, and whether it was against Nike or against Guess, that you stand with the workers who are trying to stop sweatshop abuses or stop abuses of worker or union busting efforts in hotels. And by my small role in it is to provide a little bit of extra news coverage and notoriety to the event by, being in the middle of the street, and it gets covered by Rolling Stone.
Yeah, and it works, because I remember, I got arrested, Larry Lessig, all these important people in the movement, the Code Pink women, minority leaders, et cetera. And then Rosario comes on the last day, because it was a whole week of civil disobedience, and then all of a sudden the press was like, okay, oh my God, there's being an arrest. Like on the first day, we broke the record for most number of people arrested at the Capitol. Nobody cared.
Right. That's funny. Yeah. I remember the judge telling me, it was at I think it might have been the last one, that it was to help hotel workers. We shut down the road to LA, Century Park to LAX, because the hotels there was a big union busting movement going on there. And so then I'm later in front of the judge, and the judge is explaining to me like I'm a toddler how this is not the way that change occurs in our country. And this, I'm like, well, what about Martin Luther King? He was arrested, more times than you are years old right now, and that is one of the ways that you change the world, is by putting your body on the gears of history, and you make them stop in a particular place, in a particular time, to make a particular point.
Yeah, that's absolutely how change happens. Anytime you try to get real change, they tell you you're being too loud, too disruptive, you're an agitator, all the things they don't want you to do because you might actually get it.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't want change.
Well, I mean, as Frederick Douglass famously said, power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will.
So, will you come get arrested with me next time we do Democracy Street?
I coach a lot of Little League now, bro. I'm not. I'm tapped out on the.
No, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you arrested.
Yeah,
okay.
We'll see about that. I got some responsibilities on the field.
No, me too.
On the field of dreams.
I see. You got 2 kids now, Rhodes and Roman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot we have in common. First of all, your kid's named Roman. Mine is Prometheus.
Oh, sure. That's good.
So I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I'm still getting arrested.
I'm 5 and 6.
Yeah. So I believe that you could do it. All right. Oh, you got to teach them the right lessons.
When you catch up with my arrest, then let's renegotiate. Renegotiate.
Okay, and then back to Wolfpack for one last second here. So what do you think? Is money in politics? That's what I focus on because I think it affects every other issue.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And then that's the real central problem here.
I think it's a step. I think it's an important step, and it's one of the most egregious smears on our democracy. You know what I mean? But I think that you can get all the money you want out of politics, and there are still imperialist demands and economic demands of inequality required by the system under which we live. That's not going to go away. Yes, you'll have a better chance of your Democratic, state senator not being bought and paid for by whether it's the NRA or ExxonMobil, and it's a worthy endeavor. I think you should do it, and I'm on your side. That's what I meant to say. I don't want to take any air out of that excellent balloon. But I think I don't think that's the only. I don't think that's the only issue that you have to if you really I aim high. You know what I mean? I aim high. I'm like get the world you really want to live in. Don't settle for the one that you might. Don't aim to lose. Don't aim to lose. And so, while I'm a better guitar player than I am an organizer, I've accepted that. I've tried both. Through my vocation, it's about, through the poetry and through the music, about really aiming high and don't settle for any world other than the one you really want and fight for that one.
So, last thing on that front is I want to understand what that world looks like, right? Because to me, that amendment is systemic change, which then releases all of the other opportunities out there to make the changes we want to make, to fight for climate change, to fight for all these things, et cetera, because we regain our democracy. And I think of Ralph Nader pre those Supreme Court decisions and how he made Richard Nixon do the EPA.
Sure.
He made Richard Nixon do OSHA and seatbelts, et cetera, and saved millions of lives. So I think that we can get back to that time, and I think it's real. What is that? I know there's no utopia, but what does that ideal look like?
I would say one thing that I think is very, very important is not to squabble on the left. You know what I mean? I think let a million flowers bloom and let everyone's individual creativity and their ideas and the way that they want to engage, that's how change happens, rather than us going, well, you're not, I'm more anarchist than you, so screw your plan and listen to what I have to say, and shouting each other down. There's a lot of that, and I think that is entirely counterproductive. I would say that the world that I'd like to inhabit is one that uses the world's wealth to make sure that no one goes hungry at night, to make sure that everyone has a home, to make sure that everyone is treated decently and with respect and dignity in their place of work, that the planet does not die because of greed. Start with those 4 things, you know what I mean? And let's take it from there.
All right, great. So how can people watch Prophets of Rage?
Prophets of Rage are coming to prophetsofrage.com. All the tour dates are up there. We're coming to it's a barnstorming tour. We're coming to a town near you. It's Rage Against the Machine, Public Enemy, Cypress Hill. The jams you want to hear, some brand new jams, including a song called The Party's Over. The first stop on our tour is the Republican National Convention. We're going to be playing in the streets and in the fields and in the venues. We're not announcing where yet because the SWAT team might get their snipers out. I kid, but
it is Cleveland.
It is Cleveland. Yeah, there's one warm-up show. The warm-up show is playing Skid Row here in Los Angeles, a show for the residents of Skid Row in LA. Then we're going to RNC and we're going to give them hell.
That's awesome. I'll be at the RNC too, so I'll be on the lookout there. And yeah, you never know. Look. I last night the Cavs won, and I celebrate for LeBron. He's more than earned it, but I don't celebrate for Cleveland. And those Cleveland cops are their reaction to what happened with Tamir Rice and everything else was as despicable as I have seen in anything we've covered.
Sure. Yeah.
So you guys doing those songs in the vicinity of the RNC mixed with Cleveland cops, oh boy.
Yeah, it sounds like a mosh pit's about ready to break out.
Yeah, something's going to break out. So looking forward to seeing that. Tom Morello, thank you for
very
being on,
much.
man.
Appreciate
Really
it.
appreciate it.
Cheers.